Susanna, it's
Hey,
nice to see you again.
good to see you too. I mean, when was the last? It's been a minute.
Yes, it has
I,
been several minutes. Yes.
yeah, but
So it's
what is time right now?
what is time? What is time? We have a job to do together, and so the first question I want to ask you is, how did you get interested in mental health and in the research space, grad school,
Yeah,
academia space?
yeah, it's a question I get asked a lot, and I've luckily had some time to, think over it. So back in I think it was my third year of my PhD, I had a really, really hard time. A bunch of different kind of situations came together, and I ended up in probably the worst space in terms of my own mental health than I've ever been in, and hopefully the worst that I will ever be in. And I was really lucky to get through that and to have at least some support getting through that. And then about a year later, I read this paper that came out in Nature Biotech that showed somewhere between 25 and 40% of grad students were dealing with mental health issues. And I was just like, wow, I wish I had known this. I wish that I had known about what was happening, and sort of thought about the fact that I might have known some statistics, but I certainly never could picture like 40% of people, and I think that was pretty common. And so I was like, all right, well, what do I wish I had a year ago? What would have made me maybe get help sooner? What would have made me feel less isolated? And it was really to have some faces, have some oh, hey, this person I look up to, and they've also struggled, and maybe I can talk about it. So that's how PhD Balance was founded, and just kind of rolled with it. That you get to talk with some amazing folks. But I mean, you've been in this game longer than I have. What led you to do the From PhD to Life, all the other work that you've done?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I admit that part of me is like, I shouldn't be in this conversation because mental health is not my beat specifically.
Yeah.
But of course, in the same in the same way that being healthy physically, it's the same thing, right? Being healthy mentally, of course, it's all the same. And let's not talk about why that's scientifically true, but right, it's all the same. Um, so yeah, right. I
Just really quick, what's your whole backstory? What are your
Yeah.
motivations? Who
So
are
here's
you?
the short version, and interrupt me if I
Oh, please.
if it's not short. So I finished my PhD in 2012, and I started it in 2004. So I'll let you do the math on that. It's not an outrageous amount of time, but if you can imagine that I might have had a better experience, that is an accurate thing to think. I might have had a better experience. And it became, so it's very important for me in my work now to, as much as I can, be a support for folks to hopefully have a better experience. And I'm an outsider in this world. I don't have a university position. I mean, same as you, Susanna, if I'm correct
Yeah.
on that, right? So
No, yeah, you're super right.
yeah, so in a way, like we kind of understand the inside, but we're outsiders. Anyways, I'm veering. So yes, I finished my PhD in 2012, and I stumbled into the world of academic career coaching. Did some courses on that, had my first clients, and now it's 7 years later. So here I am. And like you, I have learned along the way that mental health is a huge issue, and something to be taken seriously. And it's a big, big, big problem. And the way that I approach it often is it's a big part of the beast that is academic culture, making people
Yeah.
feel shitty about themselves.
Yeah. Well, and to your point of we're kind of outsiders. I mean, I was able to do some of this stuff, and same with you. I mean, I got my PhD in microbiology, immunology. I'm not coming at this at hey, I've been trained in psychology. And that's actually what gave me the space to talk about it, because oftentimes, if you're going to talk from the point of an expert, there's so many hoops you jump through, there's so many different liabilities. And as someone who is just speaking from experience, I had a lot of leeway, but that's the same as being out of academia. The stuff I can say now, and people aren't going to stand in the way of my entire future anymore. And so I think that's a lot of times where we see folks outside of academia really still being involved in this stuff.
It's academic culture and the whole structure around academia and the imposition of values and the ranking of what's important. It's so strong, I think. I mean, of course, every individual experience is going to be different, but it's such a strong culture and system and all of that stuff. And it becomes very challenging for individuals who don't quite fit that mold to even first recognize that they're maybe not fitting, because that's very difficult to even think, oh, maybe this is not my best self community. Right.
Right. Well, and it's not something of, oh, you've got some different perspective, like let's foster that, because they tell us all the time, we want to foster different, different people, different cultures, all of these things. But the moment that you don't fit into the exact mold, like you're saying, it doesn't even become, how can we change this mold? It becomes like, should you really be here? Like maybe you'd be happier somewhere else, so we wouldn't have to deal with it maybe. And even really well-intended people who don't have we don't want to deal with it, but are rather just like, I don't see a way that you could stay in this system and be supported.
What are the manifestations, would you say, Susanna, from your experience and from your knowledge of working with folks in this space, interacting with folks in this space? What are the manifestations of that maybe one should pay greater attention to their mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, kind of the way that I usually think about it is like those teen magazines that are, figure out if you have a crush on somebody. If you're thinking of a person while you're doing that quiz, like you probably have a crush on them. And if you get to a point where you're looking around and thinking like, hey, maybe my mental health isn't great, or I'm seeing some stuff, or other people are telling me things. If you start questioning, that's probably the right time. And the worst thing that happens, right, is you're like, oh, maybe I should get some help. Any decent mental health care person, no matter what their level, is never going to look at you and say like, wow, you're wasting your time. Because I think just like you were saying with physical health, somebody who doesn't have underlying conditions is still going to benefit from healthy eating and exercise. But yeah, I mean, what about you? What are some of the signs that, you look for in yourself, or you kind of, at least for me, being in this space so often, like, there's things that I see in other people and I'm like, this isn't my place. I'll talk about my stuff, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's something going on.
Yes. So like you, I'm not trained as a psychologist. My PhD was in history. And so in the beginning, I did talk a lot about and I still talk a lot about my own experience. And in the work that I do with clients now, and in the conversations that I have, I see a lot of what I call academic gremlins. And so an example of that is imposter syndrome. And it's basically what your own thoughts are telling to you. And a strong, bold way of putting it is that your thoughts are lying to you. I think there could be some nuance to that. I don't want to, say that you're gaslighting yourself necessarily, but the important thing is for folks to recognize, okay, so what are the thoughts that you're having? What are the thoughts that you're having? So your own internal critics, for example, your gremlins or imposter syndrome, whatever it is, notice that, right? Recognize them, and then investigate. So what's all that about? And in a workshop I did a few years ago, I had a postdoc say to me, oh, you fight gremlins with evidence. Well, yeah, exactly. So what's going on? And then what is in fact true? And not only what is true, but what is useful? And so it's very easy to have a thought like, oh, I'm a giant failure. I don't have any future. I'll never be published. Nobody cares, blah, 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 all of this kind of stuff. But then to say, okay, hold on, I'm having these thoughts. What is actually true? What is actually true? And what is the evidence? What evidence can I bring to bear? And once we do that, once we, do science on our thoughts, then I think that's a really quick It doesn't work for everyone. I mean, you know, if you're in a deep depression, this kind of intervention is not going to work.
Right.
But for folks that have kind of a baseline level of, you know, all rightness, let's say, and
Yeah.
excuse me if I'm getting the language wrong on this. I don't mean to anyways be an ass, but yeah, sort of a baseline okayness, this intervention of, okay, what is thought and what is true and useful in this and what is bullshit.
Yeah. Right. And I totally agree with you of, you know, trying to be logical and especially if you're at a place where you're just kind of like in that first slide, you're like, oh, this is different. Like I haven't had these thoughts in a while ever of, you know, feeling like, okay, yeah, I might be burned out from being in the lab in the colloquial sense, but wow, I actually don't want to do anything. I don't want to see friends. I don't want to, nothing is fun. Everything is scary. But yeah, to that point of if you're in it, it's really hard to be that person for yourself. And I think something that made it hard for me was the fact that I sort of relied too much on the fact that I was a scientist. I was like, oh, I'm smart. If there's a problem, I would of course know it. And if there was a solution, I would know it. But I also, and tell me what you think about this, but I also think some of the issue is that we're told, well, grad school's hard, academia is hard. And, you know, we've got that internal gaslighting, but also external of, you know, there's just because something is common or average doesn't mean it's good. More than 50% of people need like vision help sometime in their life, but we certainly would never tell people, you know, seeing's kind of hard, but it's just part of life.
Yeah. Yes. And what about this whole thing around asking for help? Right.
just the laugh. Yeah, right. It's I really think we need to start changing the narrative around it to be and everyone I've talked to who's dealing with a mental illness and trying to find accommodations, trying to find a way through it, I've never heard from somebody saying, I wish it was easier. I wish I could just do less work. They're all literally saying, I wish I could be more productive. I wish that I was the best version of myself, the best graduate student. And to think about getting help as you're actually just improving yourself. You're just making you more efficient, more effective, and having a better life. And that, I know it's so cliche, right? But in terms of getting help is an actual type of strength, I really think it is. It's so hard to do that. But I would love to ask you, you know, in terms of like getting help, what are some of the things that you found in grad school or afterwards that kind of allowed you to take care of yourself and decompress from whatever is going on?
Yeah, that's a great question. The one word answer is Twitter. After I finished grad school, the longer answer is I have found that it's really, really, really important to have strong relationships with people. Not with every person, but people that feed your soul and that are there for you as a person, and that is really important. The other thing about asking for help is that, yeah, it's a cliche, but you know, Olympic athletes have coaches, right? CEOs have executive coaches, and the companies pay a lot of money for these people. And it's not because the folks that need coaching, that take advantage of coaching, are failures. It's the opposite. It's that they're actually extremely successful and operating at a global level, right? and so the fact that somebody would need help is a marker of highly effective, proficient, engaged, and all of that good thing. And so it's a good thing. It's a good thing if you need help. It does require vulnerability. It requires vulnerability, and that's scary. And so quick things that I say to people frequently is asking for help is actually an invitation to other people. It's inviting other people to help you, and people like helping other people. People love giving advice. People love talking about themselves. So it's a fun thing for them. It's not a burden. It's not a burden. You're not wasting somebody's time. You're providing them with an opportunity to do good in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, I feel like a lot of times when I didn't want to ask for help, it wasn't that I didn't need it. It was the fact that I didn't want to be a burden on somebody else. I didn't think I was deserving of their time. And that really did change for me when I started thinking about, well, what if a friend came to me and I could help them? What if I could be the person to say, hey, I know you need a therapist. Let me call around. I know this isn't something you can do right now. Or yeah, you want someone to just come over and watch a movie with you? I'm down. And yeah, it's exactly that. You're giving somebody the opportunity to do something good. And also on the flip side of that, I mean, there are going to be some people who don't have the bandwidth, who just aren't in the right place for that. And it's really tricky, but I think that can also build the relationship, is you can learn when you can and can't lean on them. And I think that that's completely fine. And I think a lot of people forget that taking care of yourself also makes it so you can take care of others. There's something so comforting when you say, hey, I'm having a hard time, and the other person says, oh, me too, but like my therapist is awesome. Let me tell you some of the stuff they talked about with me. And, just finding people who have done some of this work on themselves allows me to talk with them and just form that kind of bond. Did you have some of that? I don't know actually how a PhD in history really works. I've heard that it's like even more isolating.
Yes, I mean, we won't fight about this because I haven't lived your life nor you mine. But certainly, I think grad school in general can be isolating, and yes, a humanities PhD is probably experienced in that. The isolation is a big issue, and I think across all fields and disciplines, although individuals will have their own particular experience, of course. But yeah, that's a big part of it, and it's just. I keep harping on academic culture. It's a challenging environment. It's a challenging environment with a ton of competition. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. But I think it's difficult for it to be wonderful. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think it's difficult for it to be wonderful. Yeah. What we've talked so far is about things that individuals can do, and that makes sense because we are individuals and there are things that we can do. This might be a more difficult question, and the cat has come to visit a second time.
Oh, it's a better question now. We can just. Speaking of support, hello animals.
Yeah, right. What have we both seen? I don't know the answer to this question, but what have we both seen in terms of what institutions can do or what advisors can do, kind of more larger scale interventions or programs that actually work? Are we seeing any of that? Question mark?
I think so. I mean, I think just opening the conversation is really important. And I think that can happen at an institutional level. And that can happen definitely at an advisor level. There was a study that came out, I think around like 2008 from the Council of Graduate Schools looking at retention rates of students. And one of the biggest factors was whether they or not they felt supported by their advisors. A lot of advisors that I know who's, we get to be on Twitter, we hear horror stories, we hear really great stuff. And the people who their advisees say great things about them are generally the ones who will be honest when they're having a hard time, or will at least understand that others are having it. And I think right now we're seeing that so much during COVID, that one of the biggest changes is to just treat people with empathy and just say, hey, I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I imagine it's difficult and I want to support that. I want to understand that and know that I'm here for you, whatever you're going through. But I mean, which I should probably have looked this up before we chatted, but where did you get your PhD? And, what was some of the stuff maybe you saw there or you've seen in a lot of your work in the last couple of years?
Yeah. So I did my PhD in Toronto, University of Toronto, and I was, I'm still here in Toronto. One of the things that really helped me, and I never thought of it in terms of mental health, but I was really involved. This won't shock you, knowing anything about me now, is I was really involved in my community and in creating community. Mm-hmm. And so that is something that I have always done. Maybe not every minute of every day, obviously, but in different contexts, it's always been really important to me. And I think it's important for a lot of people. And I do think I think there is opportunities for people to be leaders and members at the same time, and that is perhaps the best approach is to be both a leader and a member of your community. And everybody can do that. Everybody can do that. And we each get to decide who our community is. And it's really great. It's really great.
Well, and speaking in terms of building community, being a leader, I've gotten some of this pushback, but have you gotten the pushback of, well, if you don't like it, you should leave it. And now that we have left it, well, of course you left it, you don't like it.
I'm sighing. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. And I am here for all of the different approaches to this, because there are folks for whom it is really important for them to be like, you know what, there are some challenges. And because there are challenges, I want to be involved in the solutions. And there are other folks, and of course there's all the nuances possible on this, who are like, yeah, there's challenges, and like, peace out. I'm done. And it's all valid and correct. It's, and it's interesting. And I would usually say, academia ultimately isn't the right place for me, but I think that academia is more varied than that. And there are contexts in which it could be a good place for me. So, I mean, nothing is monolithic. Nothing is monolithic. Oh my goodness, the cat is like very active during our conversation.
They just know. They're like, this seems annoying.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm not sure what my point is, but I think being annoyed about stuff is a mark that you care.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess I've always felt like if you love something, if you think something is good and could be better, why wouldn't you? I mean, if I saw no hope in academia, if I thought like, oh, this is a horrible place with horrible people, I'm out. I don't have to be here. But I think there are like some of the best people I have ever met are in academia and are planning on staying in academia. And I think that that's amazing. And I want it to be better for future people. And I want it to be better for more people. And yeah, I mean, I think there's so much good in academia that rather than saying, well, if you hate it, walk away. I mean, if you hate it, great. If you want to walk away, if you want to stay, that's fantastic. But I just think this idea of why, don't challenge something if you like it, that just doesn't make any sense to me. If you love something, why wouldn't you want to be as great as it could be?
Yeah, definitely. And it's very interesting. It's frustrating and fascinating, right? Both. This work can be done from any position. And yes, of course, there are challenges from whatever position that you're in, and there is hierarchy and blah, 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 blah. All of the above is true. But there is no one right way of doing it. There are infinite right ways. So I think that's an empowering message for folks, that they can make changes on whatever scale and through whatever work makes sense for them.
Yeah. To dovetail off of that, is there anything that, as a younger version of yourself in academia, after, before, do you have any advice for that version of Jen?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is just, I don't mean to sound silly, but it's like, be you. Be you. I mean, be the professional you as appropriate, whatever, right? Obviously, context always matters. Be generally polite, of course, all of the above. But be you and just embody who you are and what your strengths are, and come to know yourself. And that is really, really, really important. I talked to a PhD yesterday, a STEM chemist, and he is searching for a job like many, many, many people are these days. And one of the things that he said to me was that it was very important for him to only do work that he knew would have a payoff on his job search. So only, the stuff that would count on his job search is stuff that would pay off. And I said to him at one point, I'm like, gently, it's like, you seem really stressed and down and unhappy, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, you're right. And you know, the conversation that we had was that being okay with who you are and spending some time on self-reflection, for example, etc., whatever is good for you, that is crucial on your job search. Not only on the job search, but that is crucial, and it's necessary. Why am I talking about this? Right. So my quick advice is, yeah, I would, whoever you are, you have to start there. You have to start there.
Yeah.
You cannot move forward. Oh, do I hear a dog?
You do. I tried to hit mute. I was like, oh no, they're on the move. Yeah, I've got two of them, and they're the best part of my day, the worst part of my videos.
Yeah, that's the last thing. Just, you know, you have to start from you. You have to start from you. You don't have to tell everyone in the world all of the dirty little secrets, but you do have to know who you are for yourself.
Absolutely agree. And finding the people who want to support you being you, right? That one of the things that I've heard is like, don't take criticism from somebody that you wouldn't ask advice from. Right. And I think that would kind of be my key for my younger self, is like, everyone in grad school has an opinion. And if you tried to listen to all of them, you'd have to be like 14 people at one time. And the fact that like anyone you look up to, any person that you're like, this is the best person, and I just want to be them, somebody else hates them. Somebody else thinks they're doing horrible with their life. And so ultimately, like, the person that you have to live with, the person that you're going to be accountable to is yourself. And, you know, you're going to move on in your career, and you're going to be left with yourself. And I think it's really beautiful to take care of that main person. But like, I know our time is running short. I would love to hear what, if you have any failures that stick out, or like, what do you do? How do you deal with failure? What do you see as failure?
I have endless failures, small and big, every day, every day. And it's life. It's life. You don't have success without failure. I roll my eyes at myself because, of course, we hear that all the time, but it's just true. Mm-hmm. And so, but one of the things I would say is that define success in a more useful way. Define success in a more useful way. So I'll give you an example. I applied for a job last week, and I haven't done that in a long time. I love my business, right? Don't worry, clients, for listening. It's just, you know, you never know where life is going to take you. And there was a description, and it sounded very interesting. And I'm like, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and let's see what happens. But what's been really interesting for me was recognizing that the success was doing the application, period. Mm-hmm. There may or may not be other successes related to that application. Mm-hmm. We'll see. But whatever happens, that was a success.
Yeah. Right?
If I never hear from any of them again, it's still a success. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's sometimes successes and failures are out of our hands, but I think we count more of our failures than we do our successes. That, like, if you're in a wet lab, you think about the PCRs that failed and not the ones that you got to succeed, because like, well, yeah, that's what should happen. Or you think about that you didn't wake up on time, but I've never woken up on time and then the rest of the day been like, oh, good job. Like, good job for you. You did that. You woke up. No, I love that. I love your perspective on just that this stuff happens every day. I'm a big fan of just calling a spade, and you know, if I meant to work out one day and I didn't, little failure. If I wanted to do something small, send 20 emails and I did 10, tiny failure. And sometimes there's big failures, but it's just, like you said, it's just part of life.
And there's no moving forward. There's no moving forward from wallowing. Okay. I get the last word. Last question. What, Susanna, have you found most surprising about your career so far?
Whoa. Okay. I think what I found the most surprising kind of goes back to your point about being yourself, that whatever you spend time on that determines what skills you build and what experiences you have. And so did I do this mental health work? Did I do the random online psychom because I thought it would be my job? No, absolutely not. Like, I had no idea. I honestly, if you had told me that, I probably wouldn't have done it because it would be terrifying. But it was like, because I was doing these things, I built skills that now I'm more applicable to those jobs. And so I don't think we talk about that enough of, if you do the things you like, you get good at the things you like, and you could maybe do that as a job. So how about you?
No, that's great. No, that's great. And it goes back to really respect who you are and the choices that you make and just own them. And you don't know what's going to happen. And so if it ends up looking different from what your advisor does, great, because you're not your advisor. You don't want to be.
No, and they already exist. Like we don't need two of anybody.
No.
So great.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure we could talk for all day, but where can the rest of everyone find you? I'm pretty sure I already just know all of your places, but where can people find you and where can people keep learning?
Thank you. Yes. Best place to go is my website, from phd2life.com. That's all spelled out in words, from phd2life.com. Everything else comes from there.
Nice. Yep. It's easy. Yeah. I have my personal website, which is Susanna L Harris, just my name.com. And you can find out a bunch of my work about mental health, and the just amazing community I get to hang out with at phdbalance.com. Again, same as yours, pretty easy. And, I'm pretty open to people reaching out, having questions. How about yourself?
Totally. Twitter. Get me on Twitter, or not, email, whatever.
Send a pigeon. Well, this was awesome. We will catch up soon, but thanks for doing this. This was great.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.